15 years. 15 years of my life dedicated to Stratos Tech, where I had poured my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights into building something meaningful. I had started as an eager young analyst, working my way up the corporate ladder, sacrificing weekends, birthdays, and even anniversaries to ensure the company's success. I had believed in its mission, in the people, in the so-called teamwork we always preached. I had believed in her. And yet, here I was, seated in a cold, impersonal conference room, the sterile fluorescent lighting above casting an eerie glow on the polished mahogany table. The walls, adorned with corporate jargon posters, seemed to mock me. Across from me sat my wife, Isla, her posture stiff yet exuding a confidence that made my stomach churn. Beside her was Derek, the man I had once mentored when he was nothing more than a junior analyst fumbling his way through spreadsheets. He was grinning, smug, triumphant. I should have seen this coming. Isla folded her arms, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping lightly against her forearm as she spoke. Liam, after 15 years, we're restructuring your position. My boyfriend will take over from here. My wife, calling this man, the man I had trained, her boyfriend. Announcing my removal from the company I had helped build. I stared at her for a long moment, letting her words settle in. She wanted a reaction. She wanted me to be angry, to demand an explanation, to plead for my position, maybe even for our marriage. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands on the table, and let a slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. I completely understood. Derek slid a manila folder across the table. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. A severance package, a collection of HR-approved farewell documents, career resources, like I was some intern fresh out of college, and a deadline. I had until Friday to clear out my desk. I lifted the folder, flipping it open casually, scanning the lines without really reading them. My fingers traced the thick paper, my mind already racing past this moment. Isla shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Derek kept his smirk, but I could see the faintest hint of nervousness in his eyes. They had anticipated rage, maybe even a scene. I let the silence stretch a little longer before speaking. I completely understand. Relief. It flashed across their faces like a flickering light bulb. They thought I was defeated. They thought I was letting them win. Oh, if only they knew. If only they knew what I had planned for Monday. I walked out of that stuffy, air-conditioned office, the soft click of the conference room door behind me sounding more like a gun cocking than a mere closing. I moved down the hallway lined with glass windows, my reflection mirroring my calm exterior, a facade that masked the storm brewing inside me. Colleagues passed me by, offering polite nods, oblivious to the betrayal that had just unfolded. I made my way toward my office. No, not my office anymore. I had just 3 days left to exist in this space before being replaced like some outdated software update. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me and exhaling slowly. 15 years. I scanned the room, my gaze landing on the framed awards, the team photos, the piles of notebooks filled with ideas, all testaments to the time, effort, and loyalty I had given this place. Loyalty. What a joke. Isla had been playing me for a fool for God knows how long, and I had been too blind to see it. How long had she been involved with Derek? How long had they been plotting this takeover? I picked up a small picture frame from my desk. A photo of Isla and me, taken years ago at a company retreat. We had been happy then, or at least I had been. I stared at her smile, looking for the cracks, the hidden deception I had missed. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing on my chest, threatening to suffocate me. But I refused to let it. This wasn't defeat. No, this was merely the opening move in a much bigger game. I reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Jonas Caldwell. Titan Dynamics. Stratos Tech's biggest competitor. I pressed dial, lifting the phone to my ear, my heartbeat steady, my voice unwavering. Jonas, it's Liam. I think it's time we talk. A pause. Then, a chuckle. I was hoping you'd call. I smiled. Let the games begin. I sat in the dimly lit corner of Marcel's Steakhouse, a quiet, upscale restaurant where the elite came to drink whiskey and make power moves. The air smelled of aged bourbon, sizzling ribeye, and the intoxicating scent of high-stakes negotiations. Across from me sat Jonas Caldwell, the CEO of Titan Dynamics, Stratos Tech's biggest competitor. He was a man of presence, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from years of crushing his enemies in boardrooms. He smirked as he swirled his drink, letting the silence between us stretch. "So," he finally said, setting his glass down, "they really thought they could just shove you out the door and steal your work?" I nodded, my fingers tapping lightly against the glass of whiskey in front of me. "They planned it for months. Isla and Derek, they had it all mapped out. Replace me, claim my work, and push their agenda forward." I took a sip, the burn of the liquor doing nothing to dull the simmering anger in my chest. The only problem? They never filed the patent on my system. Jonas leaned forward slightly, interest flickering in his sharp blue eyes. "Your predictive analytics model, the one Stratos Tech was about to integrate into their next-gen AI platform." I nodded. "The very one." A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. "Let me guess. They were waiting to fire you first before filing. Thought they could cut you out completely and claim it under the company's IP." "Exactly." Jonas exhaled a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "Amateurs." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were all my notes, documentation, and the formal patent application papers, which I had never submitted under Stratos Tech's name. Instead, I had quietly prepared it under my own. I slid the folder across the table. "Titan Dynamics can have exclusive rights to it. On one condition." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. "I don't just want a job, Jonas. I want revenge. I want Stratos Tech to burn for this betrayal. I want Isla and Derek to feel the ground disappear beneath them. I want to make sure that when Monday morning rolls around, they realize they destroyed themselves the moment they underestimated me." Jonas grinned, flipping open the folder and scanning the documents. He let out an appreciative hum. "You know, I like the way you think, Liam." He pulled out a contract and a pen, sliding them toward me. I picked up the contract and scanned the details. 7 figures signing bonus. Senior leadership position. Full control over my technology. It was more than just a deal, it was a power move. I lifted the pen, poised over the signature line. "Derek is about to walk into hell on Monday." Jonas chuckled, raising his glass. "Let's make sure he never forgets it." I signed. As I drove home, my mind raced through the domino effect I had just set in motion. Step 1. Secure my position at Titan Dynamics. Done. Step 2. Ensure that Stratos Tech loses the foundation of its upcoming tech launch. In progress. Step 3. Make Isla and Derek realize they have destroyed themselves. Coming soon. The thought alone was enough to make the bitter taste of betrayal fade just a little. When I pulled into the driveway of my home, a home that no longer felt like mine, I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The house was dark, except for the warm glow of the living room light. Isla was waiting. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. She was sitting on the couch, a wine glass in her hand, looking as if she had already celebrated my downfall. She glanced at me over the rim of her glass, an amused glint in her eyes. "Did you have a good last day, sweetheart?" I kept my expression neutral. It was enlightening. She smirked. "I know it must be hard, but trust me, this was for the best." She leaned forward, setting her glass down. "Derek is bringing a new vision to the company. Something fresh. You were holding Stratos Tech back." I almost laughed at the audacity of it. She had spent years enjoying the life my career had provided. The lavish vacations, the cars, the house. And now she sat here, trying to convince me that I had been the problem. I moved toward the kitchen, pouring myself a drink, making sure my back was to her when I spoke. "You really believe that, don't you?" "Of course." She exhaled, standing and making her way toward me. "Liam, you're a great guy, but you don't see the bigger picture. Derek does. He's ambitious. He's—" I turned to face her, cutting her off with a smirk. "You're betting everything on him, aren't you?" She hesitated, but only for a second. "Derek is the future of Stratos Tech. He has everything lined up. His plans, his leadership, his stolen ideas?" I interrupted, watching her smile falter. "His plan to replace me using the work I built from the ground up?" Isla narrowed her eyes. "That's how business works, Liam. You should know that by now." I let the silence stretch between us, savoring it. She had no idea that her entire world was about to come crashing down. I set my drink down and smiled. "You're right, Isla. Business is business." She relaxed, mistaking my agreement for defeat. She had no idea what was coming. Later that night, I sat in my home office, my laptop glowing softly in the dark. I fired off a few quiet messages to my team, my closest allies. They deserved better than to be left behind. One by one, they replied, "I'm in. If you're leaving, I'm leaving too. Stratos Tech is nothing without you. Let's do this." By Thursday evening, I would have secured new jobs for every single one of them at Titan Dynamics. I wasn't just walking away. I was taking my team with me. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The betrayal they had orchestrated would be nothing compared to the devastation I was about to unleash. They thought Friday was the end of my story. They had no idea that Monday would be the beginning of their nightmare. The office felt different when I walked in on Wednesday morning. It was as if the walls had absorbed my resentment, the air carrying the weight of the betrayal. I moved through the halls with a quiet, purposeful stride, ignoring the polite nods and forced smiles from my colleagues. They didn't know yet. By Monday, they would. I reached my office and shut the door behind me, leaning against it for a moment. My gaze swept over the space. 15 years of memories contained within these four walls. The framed awards, the meticulously organized files, the shelves lined with books on machine learning and predictive analytics. All of it had once represented progress, innovation. Now, it was just a prison I had been forced to escape. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, my fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. There was work to do. Phase 1, quiet conversations. I started with personal emails. Not formal resignation notices, not yet. These were private messages, carefully worded, sent only to the people I trusted. My team, the brilliant minds who had spent the past 5 years helping me build the predictive analytics system that Stratos Tech was about to lose. I need to talk. It's about what's coming. Confidential. Let me know if you're free today. One by one, the replies came in. What's going on? You have my attention. If this is about Derek, say no more. I'm in. I smirked at that last one. They already knew. They had felt the shift the moment Derek started maneuvering for control. They had watched as I was slowly pushed out of critical meetings, my input dismissed, my ideas rebranded under someone else's name. They had been waiting for this moment. By lunchtime, I had private calls scheduled with every single one of them. I stepped out of my office, making my way toward the rooftop lounge, the one place in this entire building where I could think. The view stretched over the city, a sea of high-rises and ambition. I leaned against the railing, gripping my coffee cup as the first call connected. Liam, Noah, my lead developer, greeted me. What's going on? I didn't waste time. I'm leaving. A pause. Then, I figured. When? Friday. Another beat of silence. And the system? I smirked. They won't have it. A slow chuckle. Tell me how I can help. I laid it out for him. Titan Dynamics had secured the rights to my system. Stratos Tech wouldn't be able to launch without violating patents they didn't own. I was offering my team a lifeline, new jobs at Titan, higher salaries, better benefits, and, most importantly, the chance to work for a company that actually valued them. Noah didn't even hesitate. I'm in. One by one, the conversations followed the same pattern. No one refused. By the time I returned to my office, my entire team was ready to jump ship. Phase 2, setting the stage. With my team secured, I turned my attention to controlling the fallout. I began quietly backing up all my files, ensuring I had documentation of every line of code, every algorithm, every data model. Not to steal anything. No, that wasn't necessary. The true power wasn't in what Stratos Tech currently had. It was in what they didn't have. And after Friday, they would have nothing. I spent the afternoon drafting a formal report detailing my system's limitations, an internal document that Stratos Tech had ignored when Derek decided to claim it as his own. It explained, in painful detail, how the predictive analytics model required my proprietary framework to function. Without it, their launch would fail. And once I was gone, no one would know how to fix it. Phase 3, the final move. By Thursday, whispers had started. People noticed the closed-door meetings, the hushed conversations, the looks exchanged between me and my team. I was sitting in my office when Isla walked in. She didn't knock. She never did. I didn't look up. Can I help you? She sat down across from me, her legs crossed, the same smug confidence she'd worn in the conference room still lingering in her posture. You're taking this well, she remarked, tilting her head. I expected more resistance. I closed my laptop, finally meeting her gaze. What would be the point? Her lips curled into a satisfied smile. Exactly. It's business, Liam. You understand that, don't you? I held her gaze, letting the silence stretch between us. Then I smiled. Oh, I understand completely. She relaxed, exhaling in relief. That was her mistake. She thought I had accepted it. That I had come to terms with my demotion, my replacement, my betrayal. She had no idea that by Monday morning, she and Derek would be standing in the middle of a crumbling empire, grasping at the ruins of their own arrogance. She stood, smoothing down her dress. Good luck with whatever comes next, Liam. I watched her walk away, my smirk deepening. Luck? I wouldn't need it. Thursday evening, the last goodbye. As the sun set, I sent one final message to my team. Tomorrow, we walk out together. They responded almost instantly. See you in the morning. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The storm was coming. The wheels were already in motion. Tomorrow, I would pack up my office, shake hands, pretend to be grateful for the opportunity. And on Monday, they would realize they had destroyed themselves. Friday arrived with a deceptive calm. I woke up early, as if it were just another normal day. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting golden streaks across the bedroom floor. And for a moment, I let myself absorb the stillness. This was the last day I would step into Stratos Tech as their employee. As I got dressed, I glanced over at Isla, who was still in bed, her face relaxed in sleep. She had no idea that her entire world was about to tilt, that the very foundation she and Derek thought they had secured was already crumbling beneath them. I straightened my tie, buttoned my cuffs, and looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't leaving defeated. I was walking out with my pride, my team, and my legacy intact. By Monday, Stratos Tech would be on fire, and they'd have no one but themselves to blame. The final goodbye. When I arrived at the office, the energy in the air was different. My colleagues greeted me with the usual pleasantries, but there was something else in their eyes: curiosity, confusion, maybe even pity. No one openly mentioned my departure, but the way they looked at me, the way they hesitated before speaking, told me everything. I took my time packing, not because I was sad, but because I wanted them to see it. I placed each framed award into my box, the ones that recognized the breakthroughs I had pioneered. I pulled down my whiteboard, filled with notes, diagrams, blueprints for a future Stratos Tech would never see, and wiped it clean. By noon, my office was empty. Just as I was sealing the last box, I heard a familiar set of footsteps. I didn't even have to look up. Isla stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a glassy smile on her lips. Too satisfied, too smug. She tilted her head slightly, feigning sympathy. I hope there are no hard feelings, Liam. It's just business. I turned to her, letting my eyes linger on her face, memorizing this moment. Because soon, she would realize just how expensive this business decision was. I smiled. Oh, of course. Business is business. She relaxed, as if she had just dodged a bullet. She had no idea the gun was still loaded. The walkout. At 3 p.m. I walked through the halls, box in hand, passing by people who barely met my gaze. They thought they were seeing the end of my story. They had no idea they were witnessing the beginning of theirs. As I stepped toward the exit, I heard shuffling behind me. I turned. One by one, my team emerged from their offices, each carrying their own boxes. The quiet murmurs in the hallway turned into hushed whispers. Then the whispers turned into shock. The security guard at the entrance hesitated, looking between us and his walkie-talkie. He wasn't trained for this. I stepped through the doors and into the crisp afternoon air. My team followed. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. By Monday, the world would say it for us. The weekend before the storm. I spent the weekend preparing. Not for the loss. I had already won. I met with Titan Dynamics' executive team. We strategized. We finalized press releases, legal countermeasures, and a timeline for rolling out my technology, Stratos Tech's so-called future, under a different name, under my control. Jonas Caldwell grinned as he raised his glass. Monday's going to be a fun day. I smirked. For us. Not for them. Sunday night, the last message. At 9 p.m., as I poured myself a drink, my phone buzzed. A text from Isla. Liam, I just want to say, I hope we can move forward without bad blood. I took a sip of my whiskey, letting the message sit there, unread. She was trying to smooth things over, to ensure she could control the narrative before Monday. She had no idea that by 9 a.m. tomorrow, her name would be tied to a disaster. I placed my phone face down. I'd let her wait. Because tomorrow, she would understand the price of betrayal. Monday arrived with the precision of a well-set trap. I woke early, my mind clear, my hands steady. The house was silent except for the faint rustling of the curtains as the morning breeze seeped through the open window. Today was the day. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, I could feel it, the shift in power, the weight of the moment pressing against my chest. Stratos Tech thought they had won. Isla and Derek believed they had finally erased me. By the end of the day, they would realize they had set fire to their own kingdom. I checked my phone. 7 a.m. Right on schedule. A notification blinked at the top of my screen, Titan Dynamics press release. I tapped it open, my lips curling as I read the headline. Titan Dynamics acquires exclusive rights to groundbreaking predictive analytics technology. Welcomes Liam Carter as Chief Technology Officer. A full-page announcement. My name, my title, my creation, and Isla and Derek? They weren't even footnotes. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. The world was about to see the truth, who the real architect of success had been all along. I grabbed my briefcase and headed downstairs. I wanted to be at my desk when the storm hit. 7:30 a.m., the first shockwaves. As I settled into my new office at Titan Dynamics, my phone started buzzing. Texts, emails, missed calls, former colleagues, friends, even journalists. I ignored most of them. The real fun was just beginning. Then, at 9 a.m., my phone vibrated with a message that made me chuckle. Text from a former colleague. Liam, it's absolute chaos here. What did you do? I smirked, typing back. I took back what was mine. 9:15 a.m., the mass exodus. Back at Stratos Tech, the first signs of collapse began to show. My former team, the brains behind the entire system, had timed their resignations perfectly. One by one, emails landed in Stratos Tech's inbox. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position at Stratos Tech. 6 key engineers, all gone in the span of 10 minutes. And just like that, Stratos Tech's entire predictive analytics division ceased to exist. 9:30 a.m., the executive panic. The first real sign of trouble came when a call from Stratos Tech's executive office reached Titan Dynamics. I picked up, keeping my voice calm, professional. A nervous, trembling voice filled the line. Liam, it's James from legal. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair. About what? There was a pause. Then, hesitantly, about your system. I smiled. There it was. I let the silence hang before responding. I no longer work for Stratos Tech, James. You'll have to take it up with my new employer. Another pause. Then, almost a whisper. You know they never filed the patent, right? I let out a slow breath, as if I were hearing it for the first time. That's unfortunate. You're not going to help us? I chuckled. James, I don't work for you anymore. You should probably talk to Derek about that. I ended the call. Let them drown. 10 a.m. Isla's realization. By now, Stratos Tech's investors were calling. The predictive analytics system, the one Derek and Isla had promised would revolutionize the industry, was suddenly off limits. Panic spread like wildfire. Stock prices wobbled. Clients started pulling out. And then, Isla finally texted me. Liam, we need to talk. There's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. As if she hadn't sat across from me, smug and satisfied, telling me I was being replaced by her boyfriend. As if she hadn't signed off on my termination, thinking I would go quietly. I stared at the message for a long moment before locking my phone. Let her sweat. 11 a.m., Derek's collapse. While Isla tried to contain the damage, Derek was crumbling in real time. At Stratos Tech's Monday morning leadership meeting, he had nothing to present. The system, the very thing he had promised the board, was now gone. Executives demanded answers. Investors wanted explanations. By noon, Derek was visibly shaken, scrambling for solutions he didn't have. I pictured him standing in that conference room, sweating through his overpriced suit, realizing he had gambled his entire future on a stolen idea that was never really his. Poetic. 2 p.m., the lawsuit threat. Stratos Tech's legal team finally made their move. A lawyer from their side called Titan Dynamics, threatening legal action. Jonas handled it personally. After listening to their panicked accusations, he simply replied, "Let them try." They had no claim, no contract, no patent, nothing. By the end of the call, their lawyer's voice was shaking. Stratos Tech was out of moves. 4 p.m., the death spiral begins. Stratos Tech's stock plummeted. 15% drop by close of business. Clients demanding refunds. Investors pulling out. And by evening, the board finally realized who was responsible for this disaster. By Friday, Isla and Derek would be jobless. 6 p.m., Isla's desperation. My phone buzzed again. Isla, Liam, please. We can work something out. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. She was trying to salvage what was left. Trying to bargain. Trying to undo what couldn't be undone. I typed a single word. No. Then, I locked my phone and took a deep breath. Victory tasted sweet. The inevitable happened by Tuesday morning. Stratos Tech's top executives were in full-blown panic mode. Investors had started demanding explanations as reports of my departure and Titan Dynamics' acquisition of my system spread through the tech industry. And at the center of it all, Isla and Derek, sinking deeper into the disaster they had created. 10:30 a.m., the desperate strategy meeting. Inside Stratos Tech's glass-walled boardroom, a chaotic emergency meeting was underway. Derek, the supposed future of the company, sat at the head of the table, frantically flipping through reports. His once cocky posture was now rigid, his forehead slick with cold sweat. Isla sat beside him, her arms folded, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her fear. Across from them, Stratos Tech's CEO, Victor Langston, fixed them with a stare sharp enough to slice through concrete. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "You two fired the man who built our key technology, didn't file the patent, and now Titan Dynamics has full control over it." Silence. Then, Isla spoke. "We." Victor cut her off with a single raised hand. "Don't. Just don't." One of the financial directors cleared his throat. "Sir, as of this morning, we've lost an additional $125 million in stock value. Clients are terminating contracts. Our entire predictive analytics division is essentially gone." Victor rubbed his temples, his jaw tightening. "And you're telling me that there is nothing we can do to reclaim this system?" Derek swallowed hard. We can try negotiating with Liam. Maybe there's a way to." Victor's head snapped up, his expression ice cold. "Negotiate." He laughed bitterly. "You stabbed him in the back in the most humiliating way possible, and now you think he'll sit down with you over coffee and give you back his life's work." Derek had no response. He was drowning. And Isla? She was starting to realize just how badly they had miscalculated. 11 a.m., Isla's plea. Back at Titan Dynamics, I sat in my sleek, new office, sipping my coffee as I watched the chaos unfold in real time. My phone buzzed. "Isla, Liam, we need to talk. Please." I set the phone down and smiled. She was cracking. This was no longer the smug woman who had fired me with her boyfriend at her side. This was someone grasping for a lifeline in an ocean of consequences. I let the message sit for a full 10 minutes before responding. "I don't see what we have to discuss." A moment passed, then another. Then, a longer message came through. "Liam, I know you're upset. I know things got out of hand, but you can't seriously want Stratos Tech to go under. Think about what we built together. Think about all the people who will suffer if this continues." Oh, there it was. Not an apology, not remorse. A guilt trip, a desperate attempt to make me feel responsible for her failure. I chuckled softly, shaking my head. She still thought I was the same loyal, devoted husband who would always clean up her messes. She was wrong. I took my time typing my response. "You made your choice, Isla. Now live with it." 12:30 p.m., the lawyers get involved. By noon, Stratos Tech's legal team had reached out to Titan Dynamics. A formal letter, packed with legal jargon, filled with empty threats about intellectual property rights they didn't actually own. Jonas, my boss, read through it and snorted. "This is adorable." He tossed the papers onto his desk and leaned back in his chair, smirking. "They have no case. We have the patent, we have the resignations, and we have the contracts. Let them try to fight it." I chuckled, sipping my coffee. "They're panicking." Jonas grinned. "Good. Let them sweat." He pulled out his phone and made a single call. Within an hour, Titan Dynamics released a public statement confirming our exclusive rights to the predictive analytics technology. And just like that, Stratos Tech's stock took another dive. 2 p.m., the internal collapse. By mid-afternoon, Stratos Tech was in shambles. Executives were questioning Isla and Derek's leadership. Board members were furious. And the financial loss? Growing by the minute. Inside Stratos Tech's main conference room, Isla sat with her head in her hands while Derek stared blankly at his laptop screen. Their perfect plan, reduced to ashes. That was when Victor made his decision. He stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. This can't continue. Derek perked up. I know. You're fired, Victor interrupted. The room fell silent. Derek blinked. What? Victor turned to Isla. Both of you. Effective immediately. Isla's face paled. Victor, you can't. I just did. He turned to the HR director. Send security to clear out their offices. Derek shot to his feet. You're making a mistake. Victor's voice was calm but final. No, Derek. The mistake was ever thinking you were qualified to take Liam's place. Isla's eyes darted between Victor and the other executives, looking for support. There was none. Their careers were over. 6 p.m., the final message. Back at home, I poured myself a drink, watching the city lights flicker through my window. My phone buzzed again. Isla, Liam, please. I lost everything today. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just certainty. This was the price of betrayal. This was the weight of their choices finally catching up to them. I lifted my glass, took a slow sip, and typed my final response. No. Then, I deleted her number. Some losses are permanent. Tuesday morning came with a sense of finality. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't wake up as an employee of Stratos Tech. I wasn't rushing through the motions of preparing for another day at a company that had betrayed me. Instead, I was exactly where I needed to be, in control. As I walked into my new office at Titan Dynamics, the air felt lighter. There was no tension, no weight of an impending knife in my back. Just opportunity. I sat at my desk, reviewing the latest stock reports. Titan Dynamics, up 12%. Stratos Tech, down another 9%. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the numbers sink in. The company that had fired me, that had smugly handed over my career to a fraud, was falling apart in real time. And I didn't have to lift another finger. The damage was already done. 9 a.m., Stratos Tech's breaking point. Across the city, inside the Stratos Tech headquarters, chaos reigned. The board of directors had gathered for an emergency meeting, but the mood in the room was grim. Without Isla and Derek, they were left scrambling for leadership. But the real problem? The clients were leaving. One by one, major contracts were being canceled, clients citing lack of confidence in the company's future. By the end of the morning, Stratos Tech's quarterly revenue projections had dropped by over $200 million. Investors were furious. The stock was in freefall. And in the midst of it all, a rumor started spreading through the building. Titan Dynamics was planning a buyout. It was unconfirmed, but the very idea sent a shockwave through Stratos Tech's remaining employees. Because if it was true, it meant Stratos Tech was officially finished. 10:30 a.m., the call from Victor. My phone rang. I already knew who it was before I answered. Liam, came Victor Langston's voice, Stratos Tech's desperate CEO. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, smirking. What about? A heavy sigh came through the receiver. You know exactly what about. I let the silence stretch, enjoying his discomfort. Liam, he continued, we're willing to negotiate. We need that system back. If there's a way to. I cut him off. There isn't. He hesitated. Liam, let's be reasonable. I let out a quiet chuckle. Reasonable. I repeated. You mean like when Isla and Derek fired me and tried to steal my work? Victor's silence spoke volumes. You had your chance, I said, my voice calm but firm. Stratos Tech bet against me. And now you're losing. That's business, isn't it? Victor exhaled sharply. So that's it. You're just going to watch us crash. I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. He started to say something else, but I ended the call. Let them fall. 12 p.m., the final blow. At noon, Titan Dynamics held a press conference. Jonas Caldwell took the stage, standing behind a sleek podium as cameras flashed. The room was filled with journalists, tech insiders, and financial analysts, all eager to hear what he had to say. And what he said changed everything. Titan Dynamics is proud to announce that we have successfully acquired the exclusive rights to the most advanced predictive analytics technology in the industry, Jonas stated. This is a new era for innovation, and we're excited for what's next. Then, he glanced at me, smiled, and gestured toward the audience. And to lead this new era, I'd like to introduce our new Chief Technology Officer, Liam Carter. The crowd erupted in applause as I stepped onto the stage. I took my time before speaking, scanning the room, letting the moment sink in. Then, I leaned into the microphone. This is just the beginning. 2 p.m., the collapse of Stratos Tech. By mid-afternoon, the stock market delivered the final blow. Stratos Tech stock, down 22%. Major investors pulling out. CEO Victor Langston rumored to be stepping down. In less than 48 hours, Stratos Tech had gone from industry leader to a company on the verge of imploding. And the cherry on top? By 3 p.m., Titan Dynamics officially announced that it was exploring the possibility of acquiring Stratos Tech at a reduced valuation. In other words, we were about to buy the company that fired me. 6 p.m., Isla's final message. I was at home, sipping whiskey, when my phone buzzed. A message from Isla. Liam, can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened crashing down all at once. This woman, who had once been my wife, my partner, had been so eager to erase me from her life. She had sat in that conference room, looking me in the eye, smug and victorious, believing she had won. And now? Now she was sitting in the wreckage of her own making, reaching out to the very person she had betrayed. I typed a response. There's nothing left to talk about. Then, I deleted her number. 9 p.m., the end of an era. I sat outside, watching the city skyline, whiskey glass in hand. This was it. Stratos Tech, the company I had built my career around, the company that had thrown me away like I was nothing, was finished. And me? I had won. Not just in terms of career, success, or reputation, but in something far more important. I had proven them wrong. Isla and Derek had thought I was replaceable, that I would fade into obscurity while they took credit for my work. But instead, they had destroyed themselves. I took one last sip of my drink, savoring the taste of victory. Then, I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. This chapter of my life was officially closed. The first thing I did the next morning was check the financial reports. It was routine at this point, a habit honed from years of leading projects and managing high-stakes decisions. But today, it wasn't just about monitoring trends. Today, it was about witnessing the wreckage of Stratos Tech in real time. The numbers were brutal. Stratos Tech stock had plummeted another 14% overnight. Clients had formally withdrawn from multiple contracts. Investors were publicly demanding leadership changes. It was a slow-motion collapse, a corporation rotting from the inside out, and I was watching from the front row. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest as I scrolled through the latest news articles. One headline stood out. Stratos Tech faces uncertain future after CEO shakeup and executive firings. I smirked. Victor Langston, Stratos Tech's former CEO, had officially resigned late last night. That meant leadership was in free fall, and with no clear direction, the company was spiraling toward a full-blown disaster. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. This was it. The moment of absolute collapse. And then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. I let it ring a few times before answering. Liam, a familiar voice said. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but please, just listen. Isla. I didn't say anything. I just let the silence stretch, forcing her to feel every ounce of discomfort. She cleared her throat, trying again. I know things ended badly. I know you're angry. I chuckled. Angry? That wasn't the right word. I was done. I made mistakes, she continued. I see that now. Do you? I asked, finally speaking. Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who just realized she bet on the wrong horse. She exhaled shakily. Liam, I lost everything. I could hear the rawness in her voice, the stress, the exhaustion. She was desperate. She deserved every second of it. I waited, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. When I didn't respond, she pressed on. I thought things would turn out differently. I laughed. Yeah, I bet you did. There was a pause. Can we meet? She finally asked, voice soft. Please. I didn't even hesitate. No. She inhaled sharply, like the word had physically hurt her. Liam, you made your choice, Isla, I said coldly. You and Derek thought I was disposable, that I'd fade into nothing while you two celebrated. And now that you've burned everything down, you think I'd want to sit across from you. She was quiet. Good. Let her sit with that. You fired me. I continued, my voice level. You replaced me. You betrayed me in the most humiliating way possible. So tell me, why the hell would I ever do you a favor? She sniffled. Was she crying? I almost laughed at the irony of it. I had spent months feeling like I had lost everything. My job, my marriage, my sense of stability. Now she was the one drowning. I gave her one final silence before saying, "Don't call me again." And then I ended the call. 12 p.m., the final offer. By noon, Jonas Caldwell, my new boss at Titan Dynamics, called me into his office. I stepped inside, taking a seat across from his massive desk, watching as he leaned back in his chair, grinning. "You're gonna like this," he said, sliding a folder toward me. I picked it up, flipping it open. My eyes scanned the first few lines before I let out a low whistle. Stratos Tech was officially looking for a buyer. Victor stepping down was the last straw, Jonas explained. Their board knows they're screwed. They're hemorrhaging money, and investors are fleeing. I nodded slowly, absorbing the reality of what was happening. Titan Dynamics was about to acquire Stratos Tech at a fraction of its former value. Here's the best part, Jonas continued, tapping the folder. They want you in on the deal. They're offering you full control of what's left of their predictive analytics department, assuming we go through with the acquisition. I chuckled. They're handing me the ruins of what they stole from me? Jonas smirked. Karma's a hell of a thing, isn't it? I flipped through the documents, my mind processing the full circle moment I was living. Stratos Tech had betrayed me, fired me, replaced me, and now they were handing me the keys to what was left of their empire. I exhaled, setting the folder down. So, when do we pull the trigger? Jonas leaned forward, eyes gleaming. End of the week. 3 p.m., Derek's breakdown. Across the city, in the remains of what had once been his office, Derek sat at his desk, staring at the latest financial reports. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his normally perfect hair a mess. He had lost everything. The power, the position. The future he had so arrogantly assumed was his. And now, the company he had backstabbed his way to control was about to be sold off. Derek buried his face in his hands. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it had. Because of me. Because he had underestimated the wrong person. 6 p.m., the toast to the end. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my penthouse, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching the sunset over the city. Titan Dynamics had done the impossible. They had turned my personal revenge into a business strategy. Stratos Tech would soon be nothing more than a name on a list of companies that made terrible decisions. And me? I had won. No more Isla. No more Derek. No more looking over my shoulder, wondering if my work would be stolen. I had built something, and I had taken it with me. I raised my glass to the skyline, whispering, to the ones who never saw it coming. Then I drank. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The day Titan Dynamics finalized its acquisition of Stratos Tech, I was sitting in my new office, sipping coffee, and watching history unfold. The deal had been in the works for weeks, but today, it became official. Stratos Tech, once an industry titan, was now nothing more than a subsidiary under Titan Dynamics control, a shadow of what it had once been. And the irony? I was now the man in charge of the very division they had tried to steal from me. The press was eating it up. Stratos Tech acquired in stunning turn of events. Titan Dynamics names Liam Carter as head of Predictive Analytics Division. The man they fired is now their boss. The headlines weren't just business news. They were poetic justice in print. And I was about to deliver the final blow. 10 a.m., walking back into Stratos Tech. I stepped through the front doors of the Stratos Tech headquarters, the same building where I had been humiliated and thrown out. But today, I wasn't here as an outcast. Today, I walked through the halls as a man who owned the place. The whispers started immediately. Employees who had once avoided eye contact with me after my firing were now staring outright. Some looked nervous, others shocked, and a few, the ones who had stayed loyal to me, even in silence, nodded in respect. I made my way to the main conference room, where the new leadership meeting was about to begin. And I knew exactly who would be there. 10:15 a.m., the final showdown. I pushed open the doors and stepped inside. Seated at the long mahogany table were the remaining executives, department heads, and legal advisors, those who had survived the collapse. And at the far end of the table, Derek, or rather, what was left of him. Gone was the arrogant, cocky man who had once grinned at me across this very table, believing he had won. In his place sat a defeated shell, eyes bloodshot, posture slouched, hands twitching. The weight of his failure was pressing down on him, and for the first time, he truly looked powerless. I took my seat at the head of the table, the same seat Victor Langston once occupied, and let the silence stretch. The tension in the room was palpable. Then I leaned back, exhaling slowly, and finally broke the silence. Let's talk about what's next. Derek flinched at the sound of my voice, but he said nothing. He knew. He knew his fate was no longer in his hands. One of the senior executives, a man named Marshall Graves, cleared his throat nervously. Liam, we just want to say. I raised a hand. Stop. He fell silent immediately. I turned to Derek, taking my time, letting the moment sink in before I spoke. You tried to erase me, I said, my voice calm measured. You sat across from me in this very room, thinking you had won. You thought you could take my work, my career, and my name, like I was nothing. Derek swallowed, but he still didn't speak. I smiled. How did that work out for you? The silence in the room was deafening. Derek opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had nothing left to say. I turned to the legal team. His contract. One of the lawyers quickly handed me a folder. As of this morning, his employment has been terminated. I flipped open the document, barely skimming it before sliding it across the table to Derek. You're done, I said simply. You have 1 hour to clear out your office. He sat there, frozen, his jaw clenching as his eyes darted around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to back him up. But no one spoke. No one defended him. No one was on his side anymore. This was the moment Derek realized he was utterly alone. His breathing turned shallow, his face paling. Liam, please. I shook my head. We're done here. For the first time, he looked like he understood what true loss felt like. Without another word, he pushed back from the table, stood up, and walked out. And just like that, he was gone. 11:30 a.m., the final nail in the coffin. With Derek officially out, the last loose end was Isla. I didn't expect to hear from her again, but as I walked out of the conference room, my phone buzzed with a notification. Voicemail from Isla. I hesitated for a moment before pressing play. Her voice came through, small, weak, and filled with something I had never heard from her before, actual regret. Liam, I don't know where to start. I know you don't owe me anything, but I lost everything. You were right. About everything. I thought I was making the right choices. I thought Derek was. She choked on a breath. I was stupid. I just wanted more, and now I have nothing. No job. No money. No future. I don't even have him anymore. A long pause. Then, barely a whisper. Do you ever think we could start over? I let the message play out, but I already knew my answer. I deleted it. She wasn't worth my time anymore. 6 p.m., the celebration. That evening, I sat in a private rooftop lounge, a glass of whiskey in my hand as I watched the city skyline. Jonas raised his own glass, smirking. You did it. I exhaled slowly, letting the words sink in. Yeah, I did. Stratos Tech was mine now. The company that had tried to erase me had become part of my empire. Isla, gone. Derek? Nothing but a footnote in a cautionary tale. I lifted my glass, smirking. To the ones who thought I was replaceable. Jonas chuckled, clinking his glass against mine. And to the ones who never saw it coming. I took a slow sip, the warmth of the whiskey settling deep in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. No bitterness. No anger. Just a future that was completely mine to build. And the best part? This was just the beginning. The first morning after Stratos Tech's official acquisition felt different. Not in a jarring way, but in a way that reminded me of standing at the edge of something vast and new. The past few months had been a relentless storm, betrayal, revenge, and rebuilding. Now, the dust had settled, and I had won. I walked into the Titan Dynamics building, now the new headquarters of Stratos Tech's predictive analytics division, and was immediately greeted with nods of respect, murmurs of approval. The employees who had once whispered behind my back, who had distanced themselves when I was thrown out, were now seeing me in a new light. I had not only survived, I had come back as their boss. I didn't need their validation, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel damn satisfying. As I stepped into my office, my phone buzzed. A message from Jonas Caldwell. Boardroom in 10. Time to seal the last deal. I already knew what it was about. The the final phase of the takeover. This wasn't just about controlling Stratos Tech. It was about burying its old regime completely. I straightened my tie, smirking to myself. Time to close the book. 10 a.m., the last boardroom meeting. The meeting was set in one of Titan's sleek new boardrooms, where the remaining Stratos Tech executives had been summoned. I walked in and took my seat at the head of the table, a place that once belonged to Victor Langston, then Isla and Derek, and now me. Jonas sat beside me, flipping through a stack of documents while the executives looked around nervously. Some of them had sided with Derek. Some had stayed neutral. And some had quietly reached out to me the moment they realized he was failing. Jonas leaned back, looking at them like a wolf surveying a dying pack of sheep. "Let's get this over with," he said casually. I folded my hands on the table, scanning their faces before speaking. As of today, Stratos Tech is officially absorbed into Titan Dynamics. That means two things. First, we will restructure every major department to align with Titan's goals. I let my words settle before continuing. And second, I slid a folder across the table. Anyone who had a hand in my removal, in sabotaging my work, or in backing Derek, will not be coming along for the ride. A ripple of tension passed through the room. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others looked straight at their hands, realizing what was happening. Jonas flipped open the folder and began reading names. One by one, the faces around me fell apart as their fates were announced. Some were being fired immediately. Some were being demoted to positions far beneath what they once held. Some were being transitioned out over the next few months. Company speak for clean out your desk before we make you irrelevant. Derek was gone. Isla was gone. But now, the rest of the rot was being cut out, too. And by the end of the meeting, Stratos Tech's old leadership had been completely wiped out. I stood, buttoning my jacket. "Thank you for your time," I said, just as they had dismissed me in that cold, soulless conference room months ago. I walked out, leaving them to sit in the ruins of their own making. 12 p.m., the final message. Back in my office, I checked my phone. A notification flashed across the screen. A text from Isla. I hesitated before opening it. "I heard what happened at the board meeting today. I guess it's really over now." I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether to respond. Then, a second text came through. "I know I can't undo what I did. I know I was cruel and selfish and wrong, but I don't know how to move forward from this. I lost everything, Liam. And for the first time, I don't have a plan." I exhaled, setting my phone down on my desk. She was lost, completely adrift in the wreckage of her own ambition. Once, that might have meant something to me, but now, it didn't. I picked up my phone and typed one final response. "That's not my problem anymore." Then, I deleted her number for the last time. No more second chances. No more history tying me to her. I was done. 6 p.m., a toast to the future. That evening, I sat on the private balcony of my new penthouse, whiskey in hand, staring out at the city I had conquered. The skyline stretched before me, a testament to the world that I had reclaimed on my own terms. Jonas leaned against the railing beside me, raising his glass. "So, how does it feel?" I took a sip before answering. "Like the end of one story and the beginning of another." He chuckled. "Damn right it is. And let's be real, you're just getting started." I smirked. Derek thought he was a shark. Turns out, he was just a minnow swimming with the real predators. Jonas laughed, shaking his head. "And Isla?" I shrugged. "She got what she wanted, didn't she?" He raised an eyebrow. "She wanted a future without me." I continued. "Now she has it." Jonas nodded, clinking his glass against mine. "To the ones who thought they could bury us." I smirked, raising my glass. "And to the ones who never saw it coming." We drank, the warmth of victory settling deep in my chest. And as I looked out over the city, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. I never saw it coming. One moment, I was sitting at the dining table, scrolling through my phone after a long day at work, enjoying the background noise of my kids laughing in the living room. The next, Olivia, my wife of 12 years, stormed into the room with her phone clutched in her trembling hand, her face contorted with fury. "Who the hell is she?" she demanded, her voice shaking. I blinked at her, my brain scrambling to make sense of what was happening. "Who?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Don't play dumb with me, Adam," she shouted, shoving her phone in my face. I flinched back slightly before taking a closer look at the screen. My stomach dropped. There, in clear black and white text, was a message from an unknown Facebook account. The sender claimed to be a concerned woman who had come across my Tinder profile, complete with my name, my photos, and an entire history of messages exchanged with multiple women. Explicit messages. I let out a small laugh, more from disbelief than amusement. This is ridiculous, I scoffed, shaking my head. Olivia, you know I don't have Tinder. But she wasn't laughing. Instead, she turned on her heel, grabbed her own phone, and within seconds, I saw her typing furiously. My heart pounded as I watched her download the Tinder app right in front of me. Go ahead and explain this, she spat, holding her screen up for me to see. There it was, an active Tinder profile under my name, complete with my photos, my details, and a last active status that read, online less than a kilometer away. My stomach twisted. What the? My voice trailed off as I snatched her phone and scrolled through the profile. My pictures, my name, my general location. But it wasn't me. I had never created a Tinder account in my life. Olivia, listen to me, I said, looking up at her. I swear to you, I don't know who made this. Someone must be using my pictures. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Really? Someone just conveniently decided to catfish women using your face? Do you think I'm stupid, Adam? I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of frustration pressing down on my chest. No, of course not. But you have to believe me, Olivia. This isn't my account. I have no reason to be on Tinder. I love you. I love our family. Why would I risk all of that for something this stupid? But she wasn't listening. Her face was set in stone, her eyes brimming with betrayal and something else, disgust. I don't know, Adam. Why don't you tell me? She snapped, turning the phone back toward herself. Because according to this, you've been very busy. She scrolled through messages I had never sent. Messages filled with flirtation, crude jokes, and worst of all, pictures of me. It felt like my world was tilting off its axis. Olivia, this isn't me. I repeated, my voice thick with desperation. Someone is pretending to be me. This is a setup. Please, you have to believe me. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. I want to believe you, Adam. But tell me, how did these pictures end up on this account? Pictures I took of you on our anniversary? The same ones you have saved on your laptop. My breath caught in my throat. My laptop. The realization hit me like a freight train, knocking the air from my lungs. The only time I ever uploaded personal pictures to any device was through my old laptop, the one that had been sitting in our house for months before I got a new one. The one I had loaned to our neighbor, Rick, when he told me his had crashed and he needed something for work. Rick. My mouth went dry. But before I could say a word, Olivia let out a bitter, hollow laugh. You're silent now, huh? Nothing to say, she said, shaking her head. I gave you a chance to tell me the truth, Adam. I wanted to hear you say it. But now I see I was just wasting my time. My pulse roared in my ears as I watched her expression darken. She didn't believe me. After everything we had been through, after years of love, after 3 kids and a home we built together, she thought I was cheating on her. Olivia, please, I whispered, stepping toward her, but she recoiled like I was a stranger. Don't, she hissed, her eyes wet with unshed tears. I don't even want to look at you right now. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the hallway, leaving me standing there in the middle of our kitchen, drowning in the crushing weight of false accusations. I felt frozen in place, my mind racing. I needed to fix this. I needed to prove to her that this wasn't me, that someone else was responsible for this. But how? How do you prove your innocence when all the evidence is stacked against you? I barely slept that night. Olivia locked herself in the guest room, refusing to speak to me. I sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in my head, trying to piece together what had happened. I knew the truth, but it didn't matter, because in her eyes, I was already guilty. And that was when it hit me. The beginning of the end wasn't when she showed me the messages. It was the moment she chose to believe a stranger over me, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to forgive her for that. I barely had time to process what had happened before Olivia made her next move. She didn't just accuse me. She made sure the entire world knew about it. I sat at the edge of the couch, my fingers clenched into fists, my head pounding. I had spent the entire night in the living room, replaying the events over and over, trying to make sense of it all. How had this happened? How had my life, my marriage, turned into this nightmare in a matter of hours? I had tried speaking to Olivia again that morning, but she ignored me. She walked past me like I didn't exist, like I was already some stranger who had wronged her beyond repair. She had barely looked at me when she left the house, her car pulling out of the driveway at full speed. I didn't know where she was going, but a part of me already suspected. She was going to tell her family, and I was right. By evening, my phone started blowing up. First, it was a text from her sister. "I can't believe you would do this to Olivia. To your kids. You make me sick." Then came another, this time from her mother. "I don't even have the words for what you've done. I just hope it was worth it." And then, the worst one of all, her brother, Marcus. No text, no call, just an ominous notification. "I'm coming over." I barely had time to stand up before the sound of a car screeching into my driveway made my blood run cold. A door slammed shut. Heavy footsteps stormed toward the front porch. I knew what was coming. The second I opened the door, I barely had time to get a word out before his fist connected with my jaw. The force sent me stumbling back, my vision flashing white for a second before the pain followed. A deep, burning ache spreading through my cheek and down my neck. "What the hell, Marcus?" I shouted, clutching my face. "You piece of shit," he spat, shoving me hard against the wall. "You think you can humiliate my sister and get away with it? You think you can sleep around and still walk into this house like nothing happened?" "I didn't cheat," I roared, shoving him back with all the force I had. "I don't know who made that Tinder account, but it wasn't me." Marcus scoffed, his fists clenching at his sides. His eyes burned with pure rage, like he had already decided that no matter what I said, I was guilty. "You expect me to believe that? After everything Olivia showed me?" He shook his head, his voice laced with disgust. "You don't deserve her. You don't deserve this family." Before I could respond, my father-in-law stepped into the house. I hadn't even realized he was outside. He walked in slowly, his face unreadable, but there was no warmth in his expression, just disappointment. "Pack your things," he said quietly. I frowned. "Excuse me." "You heard me." His voice was cold, emotionless. "The kids don't need to see this. Olivia doesn't need to see this. Leave." I blinked at him, stunned. This was my home. The place I had built with Olivia. The place where we had raised our kids, shared years of memories. And yet, here I was, being kicked out like some criminal. For my own safety? I let out a bitter laugh, looking between the two men who were supposed to be my family. "This is my house. My name is on the mortgage. I have just as much right to be here as Olivia." "Not tonight, you don't," my father-in-law said, his gaze hard. "If you don't leave now, the next time you hear a knock at the door, it'll be the police." I stared at him in disbelief. "You called the police on me?" Marcus smirked. "Let's just say, if you don't walk out of here on your own, they'll make sure you do." A lump formed in my throat as I realized the full weight of what was happening. I had already lost. It didn't matter that I was innocent. It didn't matter that there was no proof, no actual evidence that I had cheated. The accusation alone was enough to destroy me. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Fine. If they wanted me out, I would go. But I wasn't leaving without a fight. Without a word, I walked past them, heading upstairs to pack a small bag. As I entered the bedroom, the room Olivia and I had shared for 12 years, I felt something break inside me. How had we ended up here? Just days ago, we were laughing, making dinner together, playing with the kids. And now, she had turned against me so easily. By the time I came back downstairs, a police car was already parked outside. The officer at the door gave me a neutral glance. "Sir, we were called about a potential domestic dispute. We're just here to ensure everything stays peaceful." I clenched my jaw, gripping my duffel bag tighter. "There's no dispute," I muttered. "I'm leaving." "Smart choice," Marcus sneered. I ignored him and stepped outside. The cold air hit me like a slap in the face. The neighborhood was quiet, except for the occasional flicker of curtains from the surrounding houses. They were watching. I was being humiliated in front of my own neighbors. I walked to my car, my legs feeling like lead. As I opened the door, I took one last glance at my house, the home I had worked so hard for, the home I was now being forced out of. Olivia stood at the window. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked broken. For a second, I thought she might come outside, that she might stop me, that she might say anything to make this right. But she didn't. She just stood there, watching, as I got into my car and drove away. And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't just leaving my house. I was leaving my entire life behind. The hotel room was suffocating. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress, my duffel bag lying open beside me, half-packed with whatever clothes I could shove into it before I left the house. My head throbbed from the punch Marcus had thrown at me, and my jaw still ached every time I moved it. But that pain was nothing compared to what was twisting inside me. I had lost my home. I had lost my wife. And worst of all, I could feel myself losing my children. I checked my phone again. No messages. Not from Olivia. Not from my kids. It had been 3 days since I was forced out of my own house. And in those 3 days, the story had spread like wildfire. Olivia had wasted no time in making sure everyone knew what kind of monster she thought I was. At first, it started with close family, her parents, her siblings. Then, it spread to mutual friends, and then, somehow, it made its way into my workplace. That morning, when I walked into the office, the whispers followed me like a shadow. I didn't need to hear their words to know what they were saying. I heard he cheated on Olivia. She caught him on Tinder. Disgusting. Can you believe it? 12 years of marriage, and he throws it all away. I sat at my desk, my hands clenched into fists as I tried to ignore the murmurs around me. But the worst came when my boss, the man I had worked under for nearly a decade, pulled me aside. I don't know what's going on in your personal life, he said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. But we can't have this kind of scandal affecting the company. Clients talk, Adam. Your reputation is tied to this firm, and right now, it's not looking good. I stared at him, the weight of his words pressing against my chest. You're punishing me for something I didn't even do, I said, my voice tight. He sighed, shaking his head. I'm not firing you. But if you can't fix this mess, you're going to lose more than just your marriage. You're going to lose your career, too. That was when I realized how deep the damage went. This wasn't just about Olivia believing I had cheated. This was about the way one accusation, a false accusation, could destroy everything I had built. And the worst part? She wasn't done. That evening, when I tried calling to speak to the kids, Olivia didn't answer. I tried again, and again, and again. Finally, after what felt like the 100th attempt, she picked up. What do you want, Adam? She said, her voice flat. My kids, I said, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. I want to talk to my kids. She let out a humorless laugh. Now you care? I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. Olivia, don't do this. I am still their father. You know I would never do anything to hurt them. She was silent for a moment, and for the briefest second, I thought she might actually listen. But then she spoke. You're not seeing them this weekend. My stomach dropped. What? I don't think it's a good idea, she continued, her voice sharp. I don't want them around you right now. They're confused, Adam. They don't understand why their father, she paused, her voice dripping with venom, betrayed their mother. I sucked in a breath. Olivia, you can't do this. Legally, you can't keep them from me. I can, actually, she cut in. And unless you want to drag this through the courts, I suggest you back off. The line went dead. I sat there, the dial tone ringing in my ears, my pulse hammering in my skull. She was taking my children away from me. She was taking everything. I spent the next few weeks in a haze, bouncing between work, my hotel, and desperate attempts to reach my kids. Every call was ignored. Every message went unanswered. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. One morning, as I was sipping on cheap coffee in the hotel lobby, my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from an old friend. I clicked on it, my stomach twisting into knots as I read the words. Dude, have you seen Olivia's post? My blood turned to ice. I quickly opened Facebook, scrolling until I saw it. There, plastered on her page for the entire world to see, was a long post detailing her heartbreak, her betrayal, her strength in the face of my so-called infidelity. She had written about how she had discovered my secret life, how she had been devastated for our children, how she had been left to pick up the pieces after I had thrown our marriage away. And then, the worst part, the comments. Stay strong, Olivia. You deserve better than that pig. I always knew there was something off about him. How could he do this to you? To his own family? What a disgrace. I scrolled through them, my hands shaking. My own friends had commented, some of them offering sympathy, some of them outright condemning me. Not one person had asked for my side. Not one person had doubted her story. My breathing became shallow as the reality of it all hit me like a sledgehammer. I was being erased, not just as Olivia's husband, but as a father, as a friend, as a respected man. I wasn't just losing my marriage. I was losing everything. That night, as I lay on the stiff hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt something inside me harden. I had begged Olivia to listen. I had tried to reason with her. I had spent weeks hoping that somehow she would realize the truth, that she would see what she had done. But that hope was gone now. She had made her choice. She had buried me alive. And now, I had no choice but to leave it all behind. I picked up my phone, my fingers shaking slightly as I typed out the message to my boss. I'm resigning. I'll be leaving for Sydney by the end of the month. I was done fighting for a life that had already been ripped away from me. The only thing left to do was walk away from the wreckage. Leaving was easier than I expected. Maybe because there wasn't anything left to fight for. The day I boarded my flight to Sydney, I didn't tell anyone. No farewell messages. No goodbyes. Just me, my suitcase, and a one-way ticket out of the life that had been ripped apart. As the plane took off, I stared out at the endless sky, my mind numb, my heart hollow. I should have felt something, sadness, regret, maybe even anger. But all I felt was exhaustion. A deep, bone-crushing exhaustion that made me sink into my seat, close my eyes, and let go of the past. Or at least, I tried. The first few months in Sydney passed in a blur. I buried myself in work, throwing everything I had into my new job. The long hours kept me occupied, and when I wasn't working, I was either at the gym or lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts drifting back to the family I had lost. Because even though I had left, they were still there. My children were still there. I tried calling. At first, it was every day, then every few days, then every few weeks. Olivia never answered. Instead, she forwarded everything through lawyers. Legal restrictions. Scheduled visitations I couldn't make because I was on another continent. Updates about the kids that felt more like business reports than messages from the mother of my children. It was like she was slowly erasing me from their lives, just like she had done before. And maybe, just maybe, she had succeeded. Because eventually, I stopped trying. Not because I didn't love them, but because I was tired. Tired of begging. Tired of hoping that Olivia would come to her senses. Tired of waking up every day to a life that felt like a punishment for a crime I never committed. So, I let the silence take over. 14 months passed without a real conversation between me and Olivia. Not one word. Until the night, everything changed. It was a cold November evening when my lawyer called. I had just gotten home from work, tossing my keys onto the counter when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Another case update, another meaningless document to sign. But something about the way his name flashed on my screen made me pick up. Hello. You're going to want to sit down for this, he said. My stomach tightened. What is it? There was a pause. Then he sighed. Olivia knows the truth. I frowned. What truth? The truth about the Tinder account, he said. She found out who really made it. For a moment, I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, slowly, I sank into the nearest chair. Who? Richard. The name punched the air from my lungs. Richard, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Your old neighbor. Apparently, Olivia's friend was at a party a few weeks ago, and she overheard Richard bragging about how he had set up fake accounts using your photos. He thought it was funny, how easy it was to make someone look guilty. When Olivia confronted him, he laughed it off, said it was just a joke, and that he didn't think she'd actually believe it. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around my phone. My entire body went rigid as the weight of those words sank in. A joke that had cost me my family, my marriage, my entire life. She's sending you an email, my lawyer continued. An apology, a long one. She wants to talk. I swallowed, my throat dry. My mind was a storm of emotions, rage, disbelief, exhaustion. She wanted to talk? Now that the damage was done? Now that I had spent over a year living with the weight of a crime I never committed? I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. What do you want me to say to her? My lawyer asked. I opened my mouth, closed it. Then, after a long pause, I said the only thing I could. Tell her we can talk over Christmas. That night, I lay in bed, staring at my phone screen. The email was sitting in my inbox. From Olivia. Subject, I'm sorry. I didn't open it. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. I already knew what it would say. Regret. Excuses. Explanations. But none of them mattered. Because an apology didn't change what she had done. It didn't change the nights I spent alone in a hotel, wondering how my life had crumbled overnight. It didn't change the fact that she had chosen to believe a stranger over me. It didn't change the fact that she had destroyed me. I put my phone down, rolling onto my back. Christmas was a month away. She wanted to talk. And for the first time in a long time, I had nothing left to say. The December air was crisp when my plane touched down in the city I once called home. It had been over a year since I had last set foot here, but it didn't feel like home anymore. The streets were the same. The buildings stood where they always had. But I felt like a stranger in my own past, walking through the ruins of a life I no longer recognized. I didn't go to our house. I didn't tell Olivia I had arrived. Instead, I checked into a hotel near the city center, unpacked the bare essentials, and sat by the window, staring out at the skyline. This wasn't a vacation. This wasn't a reunion. This was a confrontation, and I had no idea how it would end. The next morning, I arrived at my old house to pick up the kids. I expected Olivia to wait inside and let them come out on their own. I expected a quick exchange, a tense nod, maybe a forced smile. But when I pulled into the driveway, she was standing at the door. She looked different. Not physically. She was still the same Olivia I had loved for over a decade. But there was something in her posture, in the way she shifted on her feet, in the way her hands trembled at her sides. She was nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked as soon as I stepped out of the car. I leaned against the door, arms crossed. No emotion. No reaction. "We already are," I said flatly. She exhaled, rubbing her arms as if the cold was getting to her, though I knew it wasn't the weather making her uncomfortable. "Inside?" she asked hesitantly. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed no. Going into that house meant walking into the past, stepping back into a place that had already spit me out once before. But I had come here for answers. And maybe, just maybe, for closure. "Fine," I muttered, brushing past her and stepping inside. The house hadn't changed. Same furniture. Same warm lighting. Same faint scent of vanilla candles. But it wasn't my home anymore. I sat down on the couch, the same couch I had slept on the night she accused me. The same couch I had left behind when I was thrown out of my own house. She sat across from me, her hands clasped together in her lap. Silence stretched between us. I let her sit in it. Let her drown in it. Finally, she spoke. "I was wrong," she said softly. "I know that now." I said nothing. She swallowed, eyes glassy. "I should have believed you. I should have listened." Still, I didn't speak. Because what was I supposed to say? That I forgave her? That I had just been waiting for this moment, so I could fall into her arms and pretend the past 14 months never happened? No. She exhaled shakily. Her voice broke. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my gaze unwavering. "You didn't just ruin our marriage, Olivia," I said quietly. "You ruined me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I know." I let out a bitter chuckle, shaking my head. "No, you don't know. You don't know what it was like to be abandoned by everyone you thought cared about you. You don't know what it was like to wake up every morning, knowing your own children thought you were a liar. You don't know what it was like to sit in a hotel room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell your life got destroyed overnight." Her face crumpled. "Adam, you had one job." I cut in, my voice hard. "One job, Olivia. To believe in me. And you didn't." She covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. But I didn't comfort her. I didn't reach out. Because this wasn't about her tears. This was about mine. The ones I had shed in silence. The ones I had buried beneath anger and exhaustion. The ones I had cried alone while she lived her life, convinced that I had betrayed her. "Do you know what the worst part is?" I asked, my voice quiet. She looked at me, eyes red, waiting. "It wasn't just you," I said. "It was your family, your brother, your friends. They all judged me without a second thought. They all turned their backs on me." I let out a hollow laugh. "And now? What, Olivia? Now I'm just supposed to come back? To pretend none of that happened?" She wiped at her face, her breath uneven. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she whispered. "Good," I said bluntly. "Because I don't." She flinched. "But I do expect you to fix it," I continued. "Every lie you spread, every person you told, you're going to undo it. Every single piece of damage you caused, Olivia, you're going to own up to it." She nodded quickly, as if she had already thought of this. "I will," she promised. "I've already started. I reached out to your old boss. I told him the truth. I talked to some of our mutual friends, and I even made a post. A public post. Explaining everything. I studied her, trying to see if this was another performance. Another act of desperation. But she looked sincere. Desperate, yes. But not for herself. For me. For us." I leaned back, rubbing a hand over my face. Why now, Olivia? I asked tiredly. Why only now, when it's too late? She swallowed. Because I thought I was right, she admitted. I thought I was protecting myself. The kids. I was hurt. And I let my emotions blind me. And then, when I realized the truth, I was so ashamed of what I'd done that I didn't know how to face you. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. And now, she wiped at her eyes. Now I just want to make things right, even if it takes the rest of my life. Silence settled between us again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was hollow, because the damage was already done. I stood up. I need to pick up the kids. She nodded, standing as well. Can we talk later? I met her gaze. We'll see. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but she held back. Instead, she stepped aside, letting me walk to the door. As I stepped out into the cold December air, I took a deep breath. I had faced the woman who destroyed me. And though she wanted redemption, though she wanted a second chance, I didn't know if I had anything left to give. I drove in silence. The kids were in the back seat, chattering about their school projects, their friends, and the Christmas gifts they were hoping for. It felt surreal, like stepping into a life that should have been mine, but wasn't. For over a year, I had been nothing more than a voice on the other end of a call that Olivia rarely allowed, a distant figure in their lives. And now, sitting here with them, it felt both comforting and painfully unfamiliar. Dad, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My eldest, Lucas, was watching me carefully. He was 12 now, and in that short span of time, he had changed. His face had matured slightly, his voice had deepened, and there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, hesitation. Yeah, bud, I said, forcing a smile. He bit his lip. Are you staying this time? I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my jaw clenching. I hated that he had to ask. Hated that Olivia's actions had forced him to question whether his own father was temporary. Before I could answer, my youngest, Ava, piped up. Mom said you left because you had to work really far away, she said, swinging her legs. But you can work here, right? So you don't have to go back. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. I had never left them by choice. But to them, I had just been gone. I swallowed hard. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm here now. That's what matters, right? Lucas didn't look convinced. But Ava, bless her innocence, nodded enthusiastically. Right, she chirped. Can we get ice cream before we go to Grandma's? I chuckled softly. Sure, kiddo. Ice cream it is. For a moment, everything felt normal. For a moment, I could pretend that I was just a father spending time with his kids. For a moment, I could forget. When I dropped them off at Olivia's house later that evening, I didn't plan to go inside. I had already had my conversation with her. There was nothing left to say. But as soon as the kids ran inside, Olivia stepped onto the porch, her arms crossed. We need to talk, she said. I exhaled, rubbing the back of my neck. Olivia, not about us, she interrupted. About my family. That caught my attention. I frowned. What about them? She hesitated. They don't think they did anything wrong. I let out a humorless laugh. Of course they don't. She flinched, but I didn't care. Her family had ruined me just as much as she had. Her brother, Marcus, the man who had humiliated me in my own home, had never reached out. Her father, the man who had ordered me out of my own house, had never apologized. Did you expect them to? I asked bitterly. Or did you just think everything would magically be okay once you realized the truth? She sighed. I told them what Richard did. I told them you weren't guilty. And do you know what my father said? I crossed my arms, waiting. He said, well, if it wasn't Tinder, it would have been something else. My blood ran cold. Excuse me. She looked away, shame coloring her expression. He thinks you would have cheated eventually. That men always do. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. Marcus? I asked. She hesitated before shaking her head. He still thinks hitting you was justified. He says he was protecting his sister. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my throat. Protecting you from what, Olivia? From your own paranoia? She winced, but didn't argue. Because she knew I was right. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. So what are you telling me? I asked. That your family still hates me? That they don't care that they ruined my life? She hesitated. I just don't want things to be ugly forever. I stared at her in disbelief. Olivia, I said slowly, I lost everything because of you. Because of them. And now you're telling me you want me to just pretend it never happened? She shook her head quickly. No, she swallowed. I don't know what I want. I just know that I don't want our kids to grow up seeing us like this. Seeing my family and their father at war. I dragged a hand down my face. She was right about one thing. The kids didn't deserve this. But I didn't deserve what had been done to me, either. I exhaled sharply. I'll never forgive them, I said. I'll never sit in the same room as Marcus. I'll never shake your father's hand. And I will never, never forget what they did to me. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to protest. But there was nothing left to say. You wanted the damage undone? I continued. You wanted to fix what you broke? Start with them. I turned toward my car. She called after me. So that's it. You're just walking away. I paused, looking back at her. I already walked away once, Olivia, I said. And you let me. She didn't have a response. I got into my car and drove off without looking back. Back at my hotel, I sat in the dimly lit room, staring at my phone. For the first time in months, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel betrayal. I just felt tired. Her apology didn't fix what had been broken. Her family's refusal to acknowledge their mistakes only made it worse. And me? I had spent so much time fighting to be heard, fighting to prove my innocence, fighting to be in my children's lives. But now, I was done fighting. I grabbed my phone and typed out a message to my lawyer. File the divorce papers. And for the first time in over a year, I felt like I could breathe. The divorce papers were sent the next morning. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. The moment I woke up, I made the call to my lawyer, instructing him to proceed with the legal filings. There was no room for negotiation, no lingering doubts. Olivia had already shattered every ounce of trust one had once placed in her, and I refused to let myself entertain the fantasy that things could ever go back to the way they were. By midday, I received a confirmation email. The paperwork had been sent to Olivia. Now, all I had to do was wait. That evening, I sat in my hotel room, sipping on a glass of whiskey, staring blankly at the muted television. Some crime drama played in the background, but I wasn't paying attention. My mind was too preoccupied with what I had done. It wasn't regret. It wasn't sadness. It was relief. For the first time since the accusations had been thrown at me, since I had been forced out of my own home, I felt like I had taken control of my life again. I was no longer at Olivia's mercy, no longer begging for scraps of my own dignity. And then, the knock came. It was sharp, urgent. I already knew who it was before I even opened the door. When I pulled it open, Olivia stood there, clutching a folder, the divorce papers, against her chest, her eyes red and swollen. You can't be serious, she whispered. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Olivia, you're really doing this? She interrupted, stepping forward into the room without waiting for an invitation. You're actually divorcing me? I shut the door behind her, keeping my face unreadable. I already told you. I can't go back to how things were. She shook her head, disbelief etched across her features. Adam, please. I know I made a mistake. I know I hurt you. But divorce? This is our family. This is our life. You're just throwing it all away. I let out a bitter laugh. I'm not the one who threw it away, Olivia. You did. The moment you chose to believe a stranger over me. The moment you let your family humiliate me. The moment you made sure everyone in my life turned against me. You threw everything away. Tears welled in her eyes. I was wrong, she whispered. I was so wrong. And I'm sorry. But can't we fix this? Can't we at least try? I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temples. Olivia, what exactly do you expect me to do? Just forget everything? Pretend the last year of my life didn't happen? She swallowed. No, I don't expect you to forget. But I do expect you to remember everything we had before this. We were happy, Adam. We had a good marriage. We built a life together. We did, I admitted. And then you destroyed it. She let out a choked sob, gripping the papers tightly in her hands. You don't have to do this. We can go to counseling. We can take it slow. I'll do anything. Anything, Adam. Just don't end this. Her desperation was evident. A year ago, hearing those words from her might have meant something to me. A year ago, I might have clung to that hope. But not anymore. I don't love you anymore, Olivia. The words left my lips before I could stop them, but once they were out, I felt lighter. She froze, her lips parting slightly. You don't mean that. I met her gaze, unwavering. I do. Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, she sank onto the bed, dropping the papers onto her lap, her fingers trembling as she held onto them. Is there nothing I can do? She whispered. I stared at her, at the woman I had once adored, the woman I had fought for, the woman I had built an entire life with. And all I could feel was emptiness. No, I said quietly. There's nothing you can do. Her breath hitched. I stood up, walking toward the door and pulling it open. You should go. She wiped at her cheeks, staring down at the papers. I don't want to sign this. That's your choice, I said. But the marriage is over, Olivia. Whether you sign it or not, I'm done. She stood up, clutching the folder to her chest. For a moment, it looked like she wanted to say something else. But she didn't. Instead, she walked past me, pausing only briefly at the door before stepping out into the dimly lit hallway. I shut the door behind her, locking it. Then, I let out a long, slow breath. It was over. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, no lingering questions about whether I was making the right choice. The marriage was over. I had spent a year drowning in the pain of betrayal, of being cast aside like a criminal without proof. I had begged for the truth to be seen, for my innocence to matter, but it never did, not when it counted. And now, when Olivia finally knew the truth, when she was willing to beg and plead for a second chance, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love, only relief. I got dressed, drank my coffee, and went about my day as if nothing monumental had happened the night before. But I knew it had. Because last night, when Olivia walked out of my hotel room clutching those divorce papers to her chest, she had taken the last remnants of our marriage with her. And I was fine with that. Or at least, I thought I was, until I got a call from my lawyer that afternoon. She didn't sign, he said the moment I picked up. I closed my eyes, already feeling the headache coming on. Of course, she didn't. She sent them back and signed, he confirmed. And I just got off the phone with her lawyer. She wants to meet with you again before making a final decision. I pinched the bridge of my nose. For what? You know why, Adam, he said, his tone careful. She's not ready to let go. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter. She doesn't have a choice. There was a pause on the other end before he finally said, then you need to tell her that yourself. Later that evening, I found myself outside Olivia's house again. I hadn't wanted to come, but I knew she wouldn't stop until she had this conversation. The kids were with Olivia's parents for the weekend, which meant this would be just the two of us. No distractions, no interruptions, just the final conversation. When she opened the door, she looked exhausted. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun, and she was dressed in an oversized sweater, her face devoid of makeup. But what caught my attention wasn't her appearance, it was her eyes. They were filled with defeat. I stepped inside without a word, following her into the living room. The place was too familiar, yet it felt foreign. I didn't belong here anymore. I hadn't for a long time. She sat on the couch, the divorce papers sitting on the coffee table between us. You didn't sign, I said, getting straight to the point. She looked down at the papers, then back at me. I can't, she admitted, her voice quiet. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Why? She swallowed, gripping her hands together in her lap. Because I still love you. I stared at her, letting the weight of her words sink in. A year ago, those words would have meant everything to me. But now, they meant nothing. I sat back, shaking my head. Love isn't enough, Olivia. She flinched, but didn't argue. I know I destroyed everything, she said, her voice trembling. I know I broke you in ways I can't take back. But Adam, we have so much history. We have a family. Doesn't any of that count for something? I let out a slow breath, choosing my words carefully. Of course it does. But history doesn't erase what happened. And our family, that's still going to exist, just in a different way. She wiped at her eyes, shaking her head. I don't want it to be different. You already made it different, I reminded her. The moment you threw me out of this house, the moment you let your family attack me, the moment you told the world I was a cheater without proof, you changed everything, Olivia. Not me. She let out a choked sob. I thought I was doing the right thing. I exhaled sharply. And now that you know you were wrong, you expect me to just forget? She looked away, her shoulders shaking. I just want a chance to fix what I broke. I rubbed a hand down my face, exhausted. Some things can't be fixed, Olivia. Some things just end. She sniffled, looking up at me with glassy eyes. So that's it, she whispered. You're really leaving? I nodded. I am. Her lips trembled. What about the kids? I leaned forward. I will always be their father. I will always love them, and I will fight for them if I have to. But you and me, I gestured between us. We're done. A tear slipped down her cheek. And you don't feel anything? I hesitated. Did I? Maybe a little sadness. Maybe a small part of me mourned the life we had built, the family we had created. But beyond that, no, not the way she wanted me to, not the way I should have. So instead of answering, I reached for the divorce papers, grabbed a pen, and flipped to the last page. Then, in one swift motion, I signed my name at the bottom. When I looked back at her, she was watching me, her expression unreadable. I slid the papers toward her. Now it's your turn. She stared at them, her breathing uneven. For a moment, I thought she might refuse again. But then, after what felt like an eternity, she picked up the pen. Her hand trembled as she pressed it to the paper. And then, she signed. It was done. I stood up, slipping my hands into my pockets. I'll have my lawyer file the final paperwork. She nodded numbly. Okay. I took a slow breath. Take care, Olivia. She looked up at me, her eyes full of sorrow, regret, and something else. Acceptance. You too, she whispered. I turned and walked toward the door. No long goodbyes. No final words. Just an ending. And as I stepped outside, the cold air hitting my face, I realized something. I wasn't walking away in anger. I wasn't walking away broken. I was simply walking away. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free. The moment I stepped out of Olivia's house, I felt the weight of the past 14 months lift off my shoulders. It was over. No more arguments. No more desperate pleas. No more waiting for something to change that never would. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel as I stared ahead at the dark, empty street. My breath was steady, my pulse even, yet my mind replayed the moment she signed the papers. The look in her eyes. The silent admission that this was truly the end. I expected to feel something, regret, relief, maybe even sadness. But all I felt was peace. For the first time in over a year, I was no longer stuck in limbo, waiting for someone else to decide my fate. I had taken control. I had walked away on my terms. I exhaled slowly, then turned the key in the ignition. Time to go. Instead of heading back to my hotel, I found myself driving without direction. The city was quiet this late at night, the streets illuminated by dim streetlights casting long shadows against the pavement. It was familiar, yet distant, like I had once belonged here, but no longer did. Without thinking, I ended up at a small park on the edge of town. It used to be a place where I brought the kids when they were younger, where Olivia and I once sat on a bench, watching them play, sipping coffee while talking about the future. A future that no longer existed. I parked the car, leaning back against the seat, staring out at the empty playground. The past year had been hell. I had been humiliated, cast aside, forced to rebuild my life from scratch while my reputation crumbled. I had fought to prove my innocence, only to realize that it didn't matter. The damage had already been done. And the worst part? It had all been avoidable. If Olivia had just believed me. If she had taken a second to think before assuming the worst. If she had chosen to trust me instead of blindly siding with strangers, with her family, with everyone but me. I clenched my jaw, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I had spent so long blaming myself, wondering if I could have done something differently, if I had failed in some way that justified what had happened to me. But now, sitting here, watching the cold wind rustle through the trees, I knew the truth. It wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. And I refused to carry the weight of her mistakes anymore. The next morning, I packed my bags. Sydney had always been the escape plan, but now it was my reality. I had no reason to stay here. Nothing tied me down anymore. Not Olivia, not the house we once shared, not the people who had abandoned me without hesitation. All that remained were my kids. And I refused to let Olivia dictate how much of a father I could be. I sat at the hotel desk, typing out an email to my lawyer. Proceed with the custody arrangement. I won't accept anything less than shared custody. I want legal rights to my kids, not just visitation. I was done being at Olivia's mercy, done letting her control the narrative, done playing the villain in a story I never wrote. As I hit send, my phone buzzed. Olivia. I stared at the screen for a long moment before finally answering. Hello. There was silence on the other end. Then, a shaky breath. You're really leaving, aren't you? I leaned back in my chair, staring at my suitcase. Yeah, Olivia. I am. Another pause. So that's it. I exhaled slowly. What else is there left to say? She sniffled. I just, I don't know how to let go. I close my eyes. You don't have a choice. She let out a small, broken laugh. I know. I just thought, maybe one day, we could fix things. I didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to fix. She had made sure of that. I'll make sure the kids can call you whenever they want, she said after a moment. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. Good. She hesitated again. Do you think you'll ever come back? I opened my eyes, staring at the city skyline through the window. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe, but not for you. Her breath hitched, but she didn't argue. She already knew the truth. I had moved on. And this time, I wasn't looking back. The airport was crowded, filled with the constant hum of voices, rolling suitcases, and the occasional announcement over the speakers. But despite the chaos, I felt calm. I moved through security, my bag slung over my shoulder, my mind clearer than it had been in over a year. My flight to Sydney was set to board in 30 minutes, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't leaving because I was running away. I was leaving because I was choosing myself. I grabbed a coffee from one of the kiosks and found a seat near the large windows overlooking the runway. As I sat there, watching the planes take off into the gray December sky, my phone buzzed. I hesitated before pulling it out. A message from Olivia. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But curiosity got the better of me. I tapped the screen and read her words. The kids already miss you. Ava asked if we could visit you in Sydney sometime. I told her we'll see. I don't want to take them away from you, Adam. I won't stand in the way anymore. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. For months, every interaction with Olivia had been a battle. A fight for control, for truth, for justice. But this was the first time she wasn't trying to argue. The first time she wasn't trying to keep me away. I typed out a response. I'll always be their father, Olivia, no matter where I live. She read it almost instantly. 3 dots appeared as she typed a reply. I know. I just wanted you to hear it from me. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at the message for a long time. A year ago, those words would have meant everything to me. Now, they were just words. I didn't hate her. I didn't love her. I simply didn't care anymore. And that was the moment I knew. I had finally let go. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to suffer. I just needed peace. And for the first time in over a year, I had it. I typed my final response. Take care, Olivia. Then, I put my phone on airplane mode, took a sip of my coffee, and waited for my flight, ready to start over. And this time, no one could take that away from me.